Welcome to Red Eye Story Hour for Tales Told After Midnight. I'm your host and author, R.J. Burle, and I'm reading from my first novel from the Mountain Warriors series, Outcast. I felt like exploding, but contrary to my feelings, I sat at the bar like an immobile lump. My life was going nowhere. I had just lost my job during the worst depression in history, literally of apocalyptic proportions. My girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend rather, was reported to be cheating on me with a friend of mine. Who that friend was, I had yet to identify through the rumor mill. With my little realm crashing down, I tried to focus on the big picture. The world in general was majorly screwed, and a breach of the quarantine wall from the forbidden zone would turn a major screw into a total screw. I was a journalist. Big emphasis on was. I should have been on the front lines covering the tragedy of catastrophic proportions. But I didn't know how or even if the new government would allow me to cover it. Martial law was the rule at the moment. Even in the smaller picture, I seemed to be having a major breakdown inside of me that coincided with the global events. I was at that odd point in my life when you realize that all the dreams of hitting it big from your teens and 20s can evaporate into drudgery until death. I either had to do something, anything now, or just accept nothing for the rest of my life. I was in a dive bar in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., but close enough to still have that big city vibe. The establishment was a dump, as most places had become. Colorful, cheap plastic decor attempted to give a feeling of high life, but failed abysmally, especially since the cheap decorative material aged quicker than a bar hag's face. The powers that be guilted us into doing away with disposable lifestyle for the sake of the environment. But instead of doing away with disposable products, they convinced us that low-quality crap was reusable indefinitely. Speaking of crap, I was drinking what now passed as beer after it all went down. I drained the last warm remains of my 5th, 6th, hell, maybe it was even my 7th reusable plastic bottle of swill and ordered another. It was a good night when you couldn't remember the amount of pollution that you subjected your body to. However many it was, I needed another. The earlier drinks did nothing to ease what frustration stirred deep inside of me. Where the brew lacked flavor, they overcompensated by adding distilled spirits, therefore making a very potent beer. I took a drink of my new beer. It was ice cold, so I could hardly taste it. Glaring at the TV, I actually startled myself as I suddenly blurted to the world, "This is all just a bunch of crap." Although my inner longings weren't stifled by my beer, my powers of reason and restraint were definitely impacted to a high degree. "Shut up, man," Tommy ordered from the seat beside me. He raised an open hand at me like a traffic cop ordering a line of cars to halt, but his eyes stayed locked on the TV screen above the bar. I tended to avoid watching anything put out by the mainstream media. My dislike was based on a combination of fear of being influenced by the garbage and possibly a bit of jealousy. A jealousy because all the glory they achieved should be my own. Anybody could pump out the crap that passed for entertainment. Why couldn't I? However, this show was Tommy's baby. In fact, the show had started with a pre-recorded segment of him introducing the new episode in a fake professional voice. I thought it looked forced, but everyone else seemed to believe that he was genuinely concerned for those in the outlands. In fairness to Tommy, my cynicism may have been due to my overfamiliarity with him through the years. Tommy was in that circle of friends that I had grown with, and I knew that I would most likely cling to this friendship because there seemed to be nothing else. However, Tommy was by far the most successful person that I knew, other than my uncle Daniel Hildebrand, the current governor of this FEMA section, of course. He answered to no one. I shot back at Tommy. "Dude, why should I shut up? The drones don't pick up any sounds," I protested the obvious. But the other patrons glared at me. I then mumbled weakly, "You can't hear anything anyways." The people surrounding me were all professionals. They wore gaudily colorful suits made of material that would have passed as extravagant burlap sacks in the before. Everything these days was a show to pretend that life didn't suck. At present, the patrons ignored me and went back to the mass hypnosis that the TV screen had induced. They were watching live drone footage taken from inside the Forbidden Zone. The national news networks had just begun to experiment on a new angle of entertainment. To fund the defense of the quarantined Southeast FEMA corridor, and possibly a nefarious black budget of secret experimentations, they were using security drones to film the inhabitants in their daily lives and profiting from the entertainment value that was live streamed on national TV. It could be something as mundane as watching a woman start a fire using a bow and drill, to something as catastrophic as watching a zombie horde destroy an entire settlement. As the FEMA director of intelligence gathering, this was Tommy's baby. He was on the cusp of a combination of media stardom, great wealth, and a higher position in government, the dreamed of trifecta. I should have been happy for my friend. Instead, I looked up at the screen, angry that journalism seemed to have been replaced by drones, much like the factory worker was once angered by the robots that replaced him in the auto plants. But who would be crazy enough to willingly go into the quarantine zone? That was strictly a one-way ticket, both figuratively and literally. I put aside my anger as I looked to the TV. This episode of the drone footage actually caught my attention. Really, it was the people themselves in the film who caught my attention. You couldn't help but feel the passion and the grim determination and hope on the faces of the refugees getting filmed. 4 people trekked on a trail through the high southern Appalachian Mountains. They had a definite vibe of being a family. It was led by a man with ragged clothes, a huge pack on his back, longish hair, and a short beard. Although exhausted, his eyes were ever vigilant. 2 weary children followed him. Bringing up the rear was a worn-out-looking woman carrying a baby. Despite her unkempt appearance, I could see that she was a very beautiful woman. Oddly, I found myself falling for her. Her eyes were so expressive. The journalist in me desired to know her story. Everyone in the family, except the baby, had multiple weapons on them. I guess there was probably a small knife concealed in the baby's wrappings as well for the mother to grab if needed. The father had a battered-looking M16-looking gun that hung on his shoulder, probably something cobbled together during their 2 years in the post-apocalypse world. A handgun at his hip and 2 swords strapped to his belt. The wife and children seemed to have their own weapons and valuables more concealed. Although from prior experiences in war zones, I could see the bulges of the concealed weapons in strategic places like the waist and under the shoulders. I had the feeling that the man wanted himself to be the target as added protection for the family. As much as the lady with the deep eyes captured my attention, I still desired to stick to my guns as a cynic in the room. "Big deal," I said. "Some survivors are taking a hike." "Shut up! Quiet!" a few random voices scolded. I didn't bother to look at them as I sat with my arms folded across my chest. I watched the screen as the father looked up and ahead and stopped. He held his hand up, signaling for his family to halt. Tommy pointed up to the screen and spoke in a tone like he was mocking his own TV voice. "The dude senses something awry. He knows it's someone or something else. Robbers? Zombies?" "Yeah, this is about to get good," someone behind me said. I could hear the speaker's feet stepping nearer to the TV to get a better view. Unfortunately, I could also smell his BO covered by an even more offensive cheap cologne. I noticed that when people pick a bad cologne, they wore it heavier than someone with a decent type. "You deserve a Captain Obvious award," I said. I was tempted to say something about social distancing to avoid the spread of disease. I social distanced before it was cool, but these days it was seen as a geeky admonition. "Quiet," someone hissed at me. I smiled at the annoyance that I caused. A chill took hold of me. "Holy crap," I exclaimed as I saw 6 cloaked and hooded figures in black in the far background on the television. They stood on a hill above as if waiting to observe the coming fight. What the hell are those people? No one else seemed to be aware of them, not even the vigilant father on the screen. "Are those the vampires we've been hearing about?" I asked. No one answered. One of the vampires had a willowy figure, a woman. Despite the almost palpable aura of evil in the group, there was something attractive about her. I could almost see the depths of her dark eyes in the cavern formed by her hood. Despite the foreboding, there was something about her that grabbed me. Maybe as a vampire she was the ultimate bad girl. In my drunkenness, I literally slapped myself. With the issues with my current girlfriend, I found myself falling for anything with a skirt. "Who are they?" I asked again. "Quiet!" someone yelled. I looked around, but no one else seemed to notice the vampires, nor care. On the screen, the father directed his family to hide in a bushy stand of rhododendrons. In the winter landscape, it was the only tree with concealing foliage on the mountain. The father glared at the drone and flipped it, and us the viewers, the finger. He dropped his large backpack and then boldly stepped forward on the trail as if he were alone. He was instantly met by 4 men. The father pretended to be shocked by the chance encounter. The 4 men appeared to be genuinely surprised. Although we couldn't hear the words, it was obvious that the 4 strangers were belligerent, and by their motions were interested in the father's backpack. The father kept talking, trying to calm the men. His hands were palmed down, and he moved them in a relaxed manner as the 4 men circled and closed in. The father seemed reasonably calm despite the situation. However, I could tell that talking his way out was a losing battle. He seemed to realize this as an odd smirk spread across his face in acceptance of his fate. As the men drew closer, he suddenly drew 2 katanas, thrusting his chest boldly forward with the action, holding both swords at his side. The points aimed at the sky as if challenging the very gods above. His eyes glowed fiercely at the challenge. The smirk left his face as his grim lips formed a tight line. The robbers instantly responded by drawing their own blades. One of the father's swords blocked a slash from one of the robbers. The other sword sliced through another robber's throat. The 3 remaining would-be bandits backed up fearfully for a moment as their comrade fell to his knees, slowly choking on his own blood. Then they slowly advanced with their own weapons, swords and machetes, and returned the father's determined look. "He's screwed," I said. "I've seen him fight before. I think he stands a good chance," said Tommy. "Yeah, he's good," the man with the BO and bad cologne agreed. He spoke right in my face, and I added bad breath to his list of offenses. But I otherwise ignored him. The plight of the small family had my full attention now. "Why doesn't he draw the gun at his hip?" I wondered out loud. "Why didn't they all draw their firearms?" I wondered to myself. "Who cares? Just watch." I was so drawn into the fight unfolding that I barely heard the few people who scolded me. The father was indeed quite the warrior. He didn't wait for the attack, but instead launched himself at the 3 men. His swords windmilled effortlessly. It was a continuous movement. One sword attacked as the other one retracted over his head to protect him like a roof from the rain of the robber's strikes and slashes, or his sword went to his side to protect, and then the other sword that protected swung forward to attack while the other one withdrew again to protect. Every stab, slash, and parry was so coordinated that his swords never banged into one another. His skill was beyond impressive. Every Sunday, my hobby was to sword fight in the park with padded swords. I thought some of us were really good, but this guy would devastate us, all of us at once. He had less fear advancing into the razor-sharp cyclone than I had when advancing against people armed with something that resembled a pillow more than a lethal weapon. The father actually seemed to be winning. After about a minute, the father kicked out one of the bandit's knees. The robber dropped to the ground and did not get back up. I was sure the leg was broken by the way he crawled away from the combat, and from the pain registering on his face. His mouth opened in a silent scream, and then closed in a twisted snarl. The other 2 bandits looked unsure for a moment, but kept up the attack. It was so intense that even I would have scolded anyone in the bar who spoke up as I had done earlier. Suddenly, the wife and children broke from the hiding place. The mother held the baby in one arm and a machete in the other. The 2 children also had long knives in their hands. The two remaining bandits leered at the mother as the father scolded his family for breaking cover. Of course, I couldn't hear the exact words, but it was very obvious the gist of what was exchanged. However, the woman and the children did not fight the bandits, but unexpectedly ran between the combatants. "What the hell are they doing?" yelled one of the bar patrons. Tommy grinned as he said, "Just watch." Despite the video being live, Tommy could read the reactions like a palm reader. I could only imagine the hours he spent in a darkened room as a voyeur of the Forbidden Zone. The father and the two remaining bandits looked past the hiding place where the woman and the children came. Terror registered on the faces of the combatants as they formed a circle facing outward with the children protected in the center. Suddenly, the former foes were now allies. "Oh crap," someone from the bar muttered. I swore as well, as a horde of zombies approached the survivors. These weren't the typical shambling things from the old movies. These could actually shamble in a full sprint if they weren't too rotted. I watched the zombies pour around the six-hooded vampires like a river flows around a boulder. I almost swore the eyes of the beautiful female vamp saw through my soul through the drone camera. But that thought seemed insane. I recalled a news story of a schizophrenic patient who was charged with stalking a female reporter. He thought she was talking to him personally through his TV. I chalked my feelings up to a drunken fantasy. Some of the zombies immediately descended their slavering teeth on the men with the broken knee and the slit throat. I could almost hear the cries of pain from the men in the silent video feed. The close-ups of the zombies terrified me. It wasn't their rotting flesh or anything that was ghastly, of course, but rather the inhuman hunger in their eyes. They were dead to any intelligent thought. Cats, dogs, cows, even snakes have more humanity in their eyes. With the zombies, there was just a fire for the desire to feed on live human flesh. I was distantly aware of a chorus of reverential swearing from the bar around me. On the screen, the husband, wife holding the baby, and the two bandits put up an awesome fight, but they were so outnumbered. "Come on, zombies, get you some brains," a patron in the bar shouted with a laugh. "That's messed up, man," someone admonished. The zombie fan retorted, "The sooner the zombies wipe out that scum and starve, the sooner the quarantine area will reopen." There was some truth to that, and the room quietly watched as another bandit was overwhelmed by the zombies, dropped, and was devoured. The two children cowered as the mother, the father, and the remaining bandit tightened the circle and valiantly fought on as if they had always been a team. The remaining bandit was a very muscular man with a shaved head and a wickedly long, thrice-braided beard. He was actually a pretty good sword fighter. He would have been an even match for the long-haired father in a one-on-one combat. He used both edges of his broadsword expertly. Where the father took out a zombie with one swing of each blade, the bald bandit sliced through 2 or 3 zombies with each mighty swing. I was surprised to see the bandit nudge a child to safety behind him as he continued to fight. The way the father and the bandit were now allies reminded me of how my cousins and I would fight each other viciously as kids, but we'd band together as a team against any outsider who harassed us. The mother used her machete one-handedly, and I hate to admit it, but even with a baby in her hand, she would have easily whooped my butt, and I considered myself a pretty decent martial artist in the past. Despite the skill of the fighters, it was a losing battle. The drone moved in for a close-up of the father's face. In the middle of the fight, the man glared, and it seemed to pierce me. The raw determination struck me to my heart. I could read his lips as he yelled, "Duck!" to the remaining survivors. That was the last I saw of him in that video clip. That determination, despite standing before unavoidable death. The father drew and aimed his handgun at the drone. A chorus of angry curses erupted through the bar as the gunshot cut off the video feed. The video instantly switched over to footage from another random drone. The camera showed a stupid-looking person on the video. He stood, dully looking over a creek as he picked his nose. The nose picker looked listlessly at the camera and flicked the booger. It landed and adhered to the lens, showing a blurry footage. The drone moved erratically, as if trying to figure out the sudden half-blindedness. Everyone took their eyes off the screen. The real show was over. Why did he take time from a losing battle to shoot the drone, I asked. Tommy was furious and growled. I would like to know that answer too. They, especially that clown, keeps ruining my drones, especially whenever the footage starts getting good. I was all questions. This really stirred up the journalist in me again. I felt like I was young and about to graduate from journalism school. I somehow suddenly found the same passion that I had lost years ago. And why didn't he shoot sooner? I mean, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight, right? No one answered. I really wanted to know why. The people around me had their visual meal. For me, it was just a cruel appetizer. It seemed that, as a country, we had one appetizer after another ever since this all went down, but no main course. The answers always seemed to be just around the corner, but each corner led to another wall with no answers. I could no longer rest, or I felt that I would truly spontaneously explode.